an authentic piece of the American experience. Growing up, I never saw public servants who looked like me or prayed like me or had a name like mine. My name is Abdurrahman Muhammad As-Sayyid. That's a lot of name. And I'll tell you when I became Abdul, is when my parents realized when I was headed to kindergarten in 1989 that Abdurrahman was just going to be a lot of name. And my mom sat down with my dad and she just said, I've got to tell you, I grew up in this country. And that's a lot of name. And we might want to do something about that. Now, who knows who was topping the charts in 1989?
Paula Abdul.
Paula Abdul. And that was also the heyday of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So I became Abdul, like Paula or Kareem. Well, imagine trying to run for governor with a name like Abdurrahman. I remember looking up and just saying, there are people that look like us or pray like us or have names like ours doing these things. To the point where the first time anybody ever told me I should consider running for office, it was at my college graduation from the University of Michigan. I was blessed to be the valedictorian of my class and the student commencement speaker.
Woo.
And the main speaker that day, who everybody actually went to go listen to, was President Bill Clinton. And I gave my speech that day, and President Clinton gave his speech. He said some really nice things about me in his speech. And then afterwards, we were changing out of our robes, and I see President Clinton in a big group of people. I didn't want to bother the man, so I just started walking out. And I feel a tap on my shoulder. Who do you think it is?
Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton. And if you've never met Bill Clinton, he has this impressive ability to just look into your soul. And so he starts looking into my soul, and he asked me a question that most people don't ask graduating seniors. He says, son, why are you going to medical school? And I looked at him, I was like, well, I'm Arab and Muslim, that's just what we do. But in all seriousness, I love people and I love science, and this is just how I want to serve. And he said, okay, well, you've got a natural gift for communicating. And maybe someday you consider running for office. And I said, Mr. President, I really appreciate you saying that. This was 6 years after 9/11. I don't know if you saw my name. I've got 11 letters in my first name, and that's just my first name. People like me don't get to run for office. And we chuckled about it, and we walked our merry way. A year later, I got to watch a man by the name of Barack Hussein Obama get elected president of the United States of America. And however many disagreements we might have with President Obama's policies, I have to thank him for the first time showing me, myself, in a politician. His father immigrated from Africa. My father immigrated from a different part of Africa. He was raised in a mixed household. I was raised in a mixed household. Everybody thought he was Muslim. I'm actually Muslim. And it was the first time I ever saw myself in a politician at all. And I remember those Obama years. It was the first time any of us could look up and say, hey, that guy kind of gets it. He knows what it's like to walk in a room and be assumed about. He knows what it's like not to fit in just because of what his name is or what he looks like. 10 years on, 2017, we had gone through those Obama years, and we were in very, very different years. All of us watched in 2016 when democracy fell into the wrong hands. We watched as a man who has no concept of what it means to be an American, what those ideals we all aspire to say about who we ought to be and what we ought to believe. He climbed into the presidency on the backs of the most dearly held concepts and ideals of this country, on the backs of poor people, of working people, who he told he would do something for by telling us all that we had to hate each other. And we all know what that felt like in November. I was rebuilding a health department in Detroit. I ended up going to medical school. I also did a doctorate in public health. And I always wanted my work to be about addressing the inequalities in health. Because growing up, I used to travel 8 hours to Egypt in the summer. And in those 8 hours, I would travel about 10 years difference in life expectancy. You could travel the same 10 years difference in life expectancy traveling 20 minutes from where I grew up in Oakland County. And I knew I wanted to do something about that set of problems. I had become a doctor, and I got the opportunity to come home to Detroit to rebuild Detroit's health department. We were working on things like breaking the barriers that kids had to being able to learn and earn in Detroit, like we would want for any child anywhere. Thinking outside the box, building programs to guarantee kids access to glasses in their schools. Standing up to some of the biggest polluters in our state when they wanted to raise emissions of harmful chemicals like sulfur dioxide. Standing up to them, forcing them to reckon with the power of people. Forcing them to reduce their emissions, spend their own money to do it. Making sure that our kids weren't being exposed to lead in their schools after the Flint water crisis. And I'm rebuilding this department together with a team of people in Detroit, watching as Flint is being poisoned by the same system of emergency management that had shut down the department that I was rebuilding in the first place. And that's when I watched Donald Trump get elected president of the United States. And that was the moment in the aftermath that I had to reconsider the advice that I'd gotten 10 years on from President Clinton. Now, there was a lot of fear in that decision. My name's Abdul. I am 33 years old. I've never held elected office. The thing about it is that in this country, we believe in a set of ideals. And if you look at the failings of our politics, it is because our politics has failed those ideals. Ideals that so many in this room or our parents came to this country believing in, investing in. My dad came 40 years ago, 1978. His mom, wisest, most intelligent human being I've ever met, never got to go to school in Egypt. Raised 6 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment overlooking a fish market where my grandfather sold vegetables every day. My dad's path was walked because he would literally go between that market and school and the roof of his building where he would study by the light of a lamp across the street when the sun had gone down after he'd finished his studies and finished his chores. And he took a bet on this America, believing in the set of ideals that told him that it shouldn't matter the color of his skin, shouldn't matter how he prayed, shouldn't matter that his name was Muhammad, that he could be just as American as anyone else. He took a bet on that country 40 years ago. Met and married my stepmom, Jackie, whose family could not have come from different circumstances. Now, you probably all met my grandparents on TV a couple times.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Jan and Judy Johnson. And after that commercial came on, people were like, wait, how are they your grandparents? Which is actually a question I asked my grandpa when I was young. I said, Grandpa, how are you my grandpa? And he said, you know, Abdul, I love you very much and I want to be in your life. I said, well, that's great, Grandpa. And what this story tells you is that so much of what we create, the bonds we make, and how we construct ourselves are about the relationships we share with people. So Muhammad and Jackie, they built a home that I got to grow up in. And in that home, Muhammad and Jackie raised me and my siblings. Where's Osama and Samia? I didn't even see you guys there. Siblings Osama and Samia, please stand up. I'm going to take a quick aside here just because it's a funny story. So Osama is 8 years younger than I am. And when Osama was going to be born and they realized that Osama was going to be a male, they wanted to avoid the 11-letter first name problem. And so you can imagine them being like, you know what? We're going to name him Sam with O on the front and A on the back. What could go wrong? So, Mama and Bubba, you guys are 0 for 2 on boys and girls. Yes, girls' names were great. Here's the facts, though. They built a home, and they knew that the ideals of being Muslim and American, that those two things aren't just not mutually exclusive. That in fact, the ideals on which our country were founded are the same ideals that our faith upholds so dearly. I want to think about our history very quickly. About 1400 years ago, Imam Ali radiallahu anhu sent a letter. And if you want to take a look at that letter, it's in Nahj al-Balagha, letter 53. And he was sending this letter to the newly appointed governor of Egypt, a man by the name of Medik. And he told him, Medik, you should know that people are of two types. They're either your brothers in faith, or they're your equals in humanity. 1400 years on, Egypt is a Muslim country, and the majority of people there are Muslim. With all respect to all the people who live there, Muslim or not. And about 250 some years ago, the framers of our Constitution came together in the city of Philadelphia. And they declared independence from the oppression of the British. And they declared them on a set of ideals. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. And I got to grow up in a home where I was taught that not only were those two things not mutually exclusive, but in fact, they were mutually reinforcing. That as Muslims and as Americans, our responsibility is to be fighting for those ideals of equity, those ideals of justice, that our work has to be about upholding both our faith and our patriotism. And when we do either or, we do them both. And that we have so much to offer in this society because of that. And I remember sitting in my public school learning about those very ideals. I had this incredible civics teacher in my public high school. And she had this ability to put you in the room where it was all happening when you were learning about the framing of our Constitution. That we would be the kind of society that put ideals above identities. And those ideals, the notion that we can be a more perfect union. The ideal, in pluribus unum, that out of many there are one. Those ideals have never been more important than they are right now.
That's right.
Because the idea of a more perfect union, I want you to think about what that means. It's a contradiction in terms. How can you be more perfect if you're already perfect to begin with? But the point is that the perfection is in the process. It's in recognizing where you have failed and deciding that you are going to pick up and be better tomorrow. That is what this entire notion of this country is about. And we have been doing the work of perfecting in our democracy for over 250 years. American history is not perfect. We have had to contend with some of the deepest oppression, some of the worst forms of injustice. And yet, in our history, while we have sometimes been slow, and while justice is yet to be done, that we have been a society that has been willing to see its own failings and to stand up and to correct it. And today, we are watching as our politics has been dominated by a corporate system of reasoning. A system that tells us that all of us ought to be monetized and our worth is our bank account rather than our humanity. A system that tells us that corporations ought to be able to define the future. They ought to be able to dominate our policies and our politics. And we've watched as politicians, both on the right and unfortunately also on the left, have decided to assent to the system. Have decided to say that a few dollars in corporate contributions here or there are worth selling out the 10 million people in this state, if we believe in the responsibility to justice and the responsibility to equity, both as Muslims and as Americans, our responsibility today is to stand up against that corporate system of domination and stand up for a democracy where we are true to the ideals that we, the people, can create a government for the people and by the people. That responsibility is what we all ought to be focused on when we get out and we vote tomorrow. I've always said this. I am not running to be the first Muslim governor. I am running to be the governor of my state who also happens to be Muslim.
That's right.
And what we're saying is that we too sing America. Langston Hughes, a poet from the Civil Rights era, he wrote a poem talking about how the African American community thinks about our ideals and our failings at meeting them. A community on whom the injustices of our past has fallen the hardest. He said, I too sing America. We too sing America. And when we stand up together and we decide that we will be a part of solving and ending the injustices that anybody and everybody faces in this state, when we say we have a role to play around solutions to the problems that we face, independent of what others want to say about our very belonging, we join that tradition of doing the work of perfecting. That is what's on us tomorrow. We've got an opportunity here. They've always told us, wait your turn. We'll include you someday, wait your turn. If you keep playing at the peripheries, we'll include you. Maybe one or two of you get to sit at the table. Don't say anything. Wait your turn, though. We're coming for you. But you know what? I think you and we are done waiting. Yeah. We're done waiting while 600,000 people in our state still don't have health care, while corporate CEOs make $13 million a year. We're done waiting to stand up and say, everybody in Michigan ought to have health care. We're done waiting while the kids in Flint 4 years on still can't trust the water that comes out of their pipes, while a foreign corporation gets to bottle unlimited amounts of our water for $400 a year. We're done waiting. It's time for a living standard of water in Michigan. We're done waiting while a small family on the west side of the state gets to create a system where they profiteer off the tax dollars you and I spend to educate our kids. We are done waiting for our kids to have high-quality public schools. In Michigan, we will stand up and de-boss our public schools. We're done waiting while working people in our state have their ability to collectively bargain cut away from underneath them. We are done waiting, and it's time to stand up for $15 in the union in the state of Michigan. And we are done waiting while people are told that they don't belong simply because of the color of their skin or how they pray or who they love. We are done waiting for a Michigan that is inclusive. This work of justice, this work of equity, can't be just us. It's got to be everybody. Yeah. And what we're doing is saying that we have a stake in our future. I'll tell you, for me, this path has been grueling. We've been doing this for 18 months. And there are a lot of ups and there are a lot of downs. And there are days where you get the door slammed in your face, the phone hung up on you, and told that there is no way that you're ever going to be able to do anything. And on those days, I think about the kids that I see here and the kids that I've seen all over this path. Kids who, like me, grow up in a moment where they don't see people who look like them or pray like them or have names like theirs, whatever those names are, in leadership. They're told that they don't belong, that there's not a stake for them here, that they've got to just wait while everybody else makes decisions about their lives for them. And in those moments, the thing for me that's been the most nourishing is watching those young people see themselves in somebody who also shouldn't have a shot at this. After all, you all know, I'm too young, I'm too brown, and I'm too Muslim. We're too young. We're too brown, we're too Muslim.
No,
But we too sing America.
that's right.
And tomorrow, I want you to remember one thing. This is not about a choice for one candidate. It's not even about a choice of one party. It's about a choice, about a vision for Michigan. And tomorrow, when we stand up, when we take our voices to the ballot box, when we cast our vote, when we decide the kind of Michigan we want to be, I want you to center in your mind, in that moment, you start filling in the bubbles. I want you to envision the kind of Michigan that includes all of us. The kind of Michigan where nobody is left out, nobody is told to keep waiting, nobody is told they're not enough. Envision the kind of Michigan where we stood up to make sure that all of our sisters and brothers have health care. The kind of Michigan where access to clean water shouldn't be something you gotta work for, it just comes. A kind of Michigan where you've got access to a union movement that's got your back if the corporations decide that they want to cut you. The kind of Michigan where your kid goes to a school that has been dignified and dignifies their brains. That is the vision for Michigan that we will be a part of creating in this state, because as Muslims and as Americans, our fight for justice is far bigger than one campaign. It is about the responsibilities that we have to our society, whatever society that is, and we will no longer wait our turn to have that say. We will do it tomorrow. We will make it. And to finish on the note, I'm going to ask you two things, okay? Two things. And I want you to all remember that you made this commitment to me, and more importantly, you made this commitment to each other. Number one, don't you dare get me elected and leave me alone up there in Lansing. All right? So I need somebody to make sure they're going to bring me up that pepperoni roll every once in a while.
We are here.
But I mean that very seriously. Listen, this cannot be the end of a movement. If we want to achieve all of those things that we want to achieve, it cannot end here. We cannot just go vote on August 7th and then November 6th and be like, khalas, go. Yalla habibi, tell me how it goes. No. You guys have to be here with me.
We will.
The activism, the energy, the focus, it cannot dissipate. Second, and I'm going to say something very serious now. I need you to listen. This cannot be once and done. This cannot be a moment that passes and we all go back to our daily lives. If la samahallah, things don't go our way, I don't want this to be the last time everybody said, hey, we got excited and then it didn't work out and khalas, we went back to our daily lives. This has to continue. There are so many capable people in our communities. And they're running in races all over the state right now. You all heard from Abdullah Hamoud. You all know about Ibrahim Ayyash. You all know about Sayyidi Sar. You all know about Fadil Saad. You all know about Rashid Khalid. You all know about all of them. But more importantly, our community, right? We reload. We keep going. I hope that out of this movement, we have found our own political voice. That as communities who have been left behind and left out, that after this movement, we are no longer going to accept the status quo that does not listen to what we have to say because they know that we're not going to vote. To quote one of our community members, right, DJ Khaled, they don't want you to vote. But starting on August 7th, we have to create a culture where all of us commit to continuing forward. Because I'll tell you this, the strength of our movement is not me. The strength of our movement is you. The strength of our movement is when all of us stand up in unison, when we raise our voices together, when we demand a more just, a more equitable, a more sustainable Michigan, and a more just, more equitable, more sustainable America. This cannot be the end. This cannot be the end. But I do know that tomorrow, when we raise our voices, when we go to those polls, when we make dua this morning, when we make dua tomorrow night, when we, God willing, make the history I know that we're on the cusp of, I know that it will be our beginning. Thank you so much.